Welcome to Ditch Auto, Unlocking Manual Photography. My name's Jared, and today we're going to take a look at our exposure in conjunction with the internal light meter in the camera. So all of these DSLR cameras, including the mirrorless cameras, they all have a light meter inside. It's that little bar at the bottom of your viewfinder as you're looking through, whether you're looking through the eyepiece or using the viewfinder screen at the back. That actually shows you the overall exposure, whether you're underexposed or overexposed. So at the bottom of your screen, that's what you see here. Now, to illustrate what this does, I'm going to go ahead and darken up this image quite a bit, and we'll just go ahead and make sure I'm able to pre-focus here. And you can see that line moving at the bottom of my screen. You can see right here in the center, this is where the light meter inside of this camera says what the camera is seeing is properly exposed. So it's taking an evaluation of all of the available pixels that it's able to pull in, and it's saying here is what it considers as exposed. Now there are different metering options that are available inside of your camera, and one of those is spot metering, which means whatever location the autofocus is focused on, it's going to meter the light from that spot. That option typically is best for doing portraits and stuff like that, where you want to make sure that what is being exposed for is what you're focusing on. Usually we focus on the main subject or object in our photo. So you would use spot metering for that. However, if you're taking landscape photography or something like that, you are going to want something that's more of an evaluation of the entire screen. Now, I don't use this as the final say in my photos. I use this as kind of a guide to get me to where I want to go. Now you can see here as I open up my f-stop, I'm actually increasing exposure, and you can see here is what 2 stops overexposed looks like, as opposed to being what's considered properly exposed. Now, because of the lighting situations in this room and the fact that except for the far corner of this image, everything is the lighting and everything is hitting this completely evenly. The camera does a really good job of kind of giving me an idea of what's exposed and what's not. However, depending on what you're going for, this might not be the case. And when you use flash, the light meter inside the camera definitely isn't going to represent what you will see when your strobes go off and affect the overall image. So the internal light meter, I use that simply for a guide, and I recommend you use it because when you're in manual mode in your camera, you want to get to that general range. You want to get to around proper exposure, especially if you're outdoors. You want to get it as close to center as possible. Unless you are in a very bright situation, you might want to underexpose a little bit, because when you are post-producing your image in Lightroom or Photoshop or something like that, having a slightly underexposed image is easier to bring back detail in than having a photo that's overexposed and then you're trying to bring back detail in those blown out highlights. When something goes pure white in a photo, it's really hard to bring it back. When something goes pure black in a photo, it's kind of hard to bring it back, but it's easier to get a little more detail out of those darks in your photo than it is to get them out of the pure white. So going a little bit underexposed is usually a good option for me, especially when I am moving through lots of situations like shooting weddings and I may be in the shade somewhere, but it's a bright day out and I'm moving around a bit. I tend to kind of underexpose just a little bit so that I have that extra room. Like I said, I would rather underexpose and bring back a little bit of detail than overexpose and not be able to bring back detail because parts of my photo were blown out. So using the camera's internal light meter is a great tool to get you to where you need to go. However, leave it up to your own eye and your own experience to decide what to do with what the meter is telling you. Obviously, There are other metering options in the camera besides spot metering and evaluative. There are a couple of different options, and depending on your camera, there could be even more light metering options beyond that. So play with those and see what works best for you. For me, I typically use just a kind of an evaluative that gives me an overall metering throughout the image, and then I will switch to spot metering when I am doing portraits, just so that I can get a more exact. But when you're doing landscapes or pretty much any other type of photography, you kind of want to know what's going on in your entire scene, because then you can compensate by using a flash or using a bounce card or some sort of reflector. You can compensate for the underexposed portions of that photo. So that's a whole nother conversation for another time. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that light meter inside the camera and let you know that it is your friend. It's a great tool to be using with your camera. And just to remember to use it as a guide. Don't use it as the final say as to how you set your exposure for a photo. So thanks for checking out this week's podcast. Make sure you join our Facebook group if you have not already at facebook.com/groups/ditchauto. This specific question about light metering came from that group. We have some good conversations over there, and I would love for you to join in on that. So thanks for checking out this video, and we'll see you next time.